Hello, and thank you for tuning in. Welcome to Girl Boss TV and our first roundtable discussions. I am your host for today's show, Nxumalo, and today I have our guests, Nxumalo and Zulaika Patel. As you know by now, words carry weight. Words also have and embody a lot of energy. And sometimes words can lead to some kinds of implications. Today we are here with the word isogo. Which is part of our pop culture right now. It's a huge term in terms of South African music. And basically wanted to have a discussion from a female perspective of the word isogo and the implications that the word carry. Hi guys, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me actually, and I hope we can have a really cool and really deep conversation about this word isogo. I'm just going to jump right in actually because there's a lot that I'd like for us to uncover during our conversation. So, would you consider being called isogo as a degradation for the female identity?
Yes.
And why?
Okay, so when it started to actually trend after the John Vulligate song, there was actually a definition of what isogo is, and the definition said that it's basically a woman that is physically quite pretty but isn't an intellectual being. And I think that it basically says that you're beauty without brains. And I think that even in the sense where I've seen how the word is thrown around, particularly with the word isogo, I think it's very degrading to a certain extent, and I've seen it being used in a sense whereby it's not being said to you in a positive light.
Yeah.
It's being said in a way to make you feel less than, and to also place women basically against one another, where it's like, for example, you have Palisa and Tandi. Palisa, you wouldn't say isogo, you'd be like, it's Palisa. Palisa is basically, she's got it all. And then you'd say Tandi isogo, she's out every night, she's pretty, she's the pretty girl who's basically the life of the party. That's it. That's the only thing about Tandi. And it's sort of in a sense whereby what I'm trying to say is it sort of makes you against one another, because it places Palisa on a different pedestal to be like, oh, I'm so isogo,
Yeah.
and you are, so we're not the same, we're different. So in a sense, it's degrading, and it contributes to dividing women in a sense.
And just to add to what Zulaika is saying, it also, the term stock, just like the word itself, it speaks of a lifeless object. Stock is stock, right? You just take it. So of course, the interpretation of that then is the way in which we are now devaluing a person, because that person is not a person. Whether we're saying she's pretty, it's not a person, it's a thing. And of course, that sort of lends itself to, when you said, when we just started, you said, words have meaning. Culture, society, language, these things are embedded in words, and words carry those meanings.
Yeah.
And so what we're doing is that we're now traveling a journey of continuing to dehumanize women, making it okay for women to be treated a certain way based on what she looks like, based on the intellectual capacity that we assume she has, right? Because story is an assumption. It's a term, I think back in the day they used bimbos, they used other kinds of words, but these are all assumptions that a certain kind of woman has no brains because she's pretty, and that's okay, and therefore she can be treated in a certain way.
Yeah.
And it also brings in a crazy vibe where suddenly women want to aspire to be isogo, because there's also a little bit of a conundrum, because in as much as we are saying it's a negative thing, you know, if you're walking in like, ooh, Stocko, it's almost seen to be a compliment.
Yeah.
You know? So I definitely don't think that there is a compliment to it.
Yeah.
And just to add on, I think when you mentioned that you're being reduced to a lifeless thing, like it's stock, I think that also announces ownership. Who owns that particular stock?
Yes.
Whose stock is that? And I think that contributes to a lot of culture around catcalling.
Of course, and GBV, 100%.
And I think personally, I would say Estelle being called, like, here's an example. You're walking down the streets. You're literally just living. I don't want to describe what you could be wearing, or so you're just gonna walk down the street. There's a group of men in the corner, and they all start screaming, "We Stocko, we Stocko, 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 Stocko." That's catcalling.
Yeah.
That's catcalling.
Yeah. And just to go back to you were saying back in the days, they used to call us bimbos and stuff like that. But if you think about it, in the rap culture over the centuries, women have been called hoes, bitches, and these terms have been accepted to a point where, you know, there's a song by Drake where he's like, I hate calling women bitches, but the bitches love it, you know. And we accept these terms and we also embrace these terms. Stocko has also been embraced in our culture right now. And what is it? How do we as women also contribute towards this terms, and how we embrace it and give it power, we give it life? If you're saying it's lifeless, we also contribute to the word having so much power, you know.
I think it's really complicated because for me it lends itself to understanding how patriarchy works and the fact that we exist and we live within a patriarchal society, and the norms and the values that we have are reflected back to us consistently. So the idea that, you know, like you're saying, the words that have been used over the years to name women, to shame women, to degrade women, to put us down, to constantly make us seem inferior or make us feel like there's something wrong with us, with everything, whether it's our body or our hair, the way we speak, what we want, who we want to have sex with, where we want to live, all of those things become moments that culture uses to kind of shoot us down. I think it's complicated because of patriarchy, the way in which power works is that it is sort of denied to women, or, you know, it's less to how women are able to hold it, right? And so because if you're sitting on that side of the spectrum, you start to then look at these words that you actually don't have any control over, right? Women can say over and over again, I'm not, or let's just use it like an independent woman, right? So she'll be seen as ball busting, she'll be seen as she's hard, she's harsh. These terms, whereas if it was a guy, it would just be he's driven, you know, he's a hustler, all of those sorts of terms. And I think what we tend to do is then we try to own that, because we also feel like there's no way of getting out of it. I mean, for years we've been talking about the words that are used in rap culture. It's 2020, like that hasn't changed. And I think in the same way that perhaps some, you know, black people in the US have taken on the term nigger, you almost want to take it, to change it and give it power, because you know what, you're being called that, so how do you turn it around to be something that's empowering to you? And I think because of the nature of patriarchy, it's not that simple. It's not that simple to say I don't want to use that word shouldn't be used, and that's it. Where the power exists, where the power lies, and where that power flows influences what happens in culture, what we value, what we think is important, what we think is cool. The fact that the word bitch will never go away in rap culture astounds me. Whereas there's like literature, there's all sorts of studies and writings that have been done by academics and theorists and other, you know, artists and rappers and stuff across the years. So yeah, I think it's almost gonna need us to unlearn a whole lot of stuff.
And you know, like what makes me really think about, like the part where I think about it the most is the fact that the race aspects of things. Like when you listen to white music, Asian music, there's never almost any terms that are in the lyrics that actually degrade women or shame women. What is it about the black culture and using these terms and constantly, you know, making music or arts that is okay to us if that's being said or being done to women? Like, what is it about like the
that point? I was actually going to mention that in rap culture particularly, those terms, bitch, hoe, have always been directed at black women and black girls. And there is a race aspect. Stocko is directed at black women and black girls. And I think that that race aspect stems from the fact that historically and now, Black women have always been at the harshest end of the stick, whereby we're the ones who have always been hypersexualized over the years. Still now, even now with GBV, we're the ones that have still always been hypersexualized in society. Obviously, misogyny has existed for centuries now. The explicit hatred of Black women and degrading Black women, and also viewing Black women as sexual objects that you can own. And I think that's where it stems from. And there's so much that contributes to these terms. These terms are not just going to disappear overnight. And also, we also, as Black girls and Black women, we've also given the term, for example, bitch especially, we've given it life as well. Like, now it would be a compliment to be called a bad bitch. Like, it would be a compliment, or it's one of those terms you use when you're with your homegirls, and it's thrown around, it circulates. And it's exactly what she said, is that there's so many aspects to it that you can't just randomly say tomorrow the word is going to disappear. But then again, there's also the fact that you have to take into account, where does the word stem from? What has it always been used for? Who has it always been directed at for decades now? For decades, for example, in white music, you wouldn't hear. To date, I've never heard a white song. I've never heard Elvis Presley sing about bitches, and I don't think I've heard a group of white women also throwing the term around. And I also think that we've also been socialized in a way to think that that is a word that's meant to compliment us. That's a word that's meant that we should own and give life to as well.
Yeah. What do you guys think happens to the psyche of the Black female, like you mentioned earlier on, that there's this kind of separatism that takes place between Uthandi and Baleza, right? What do you think takes place in the psyche of Uthandi, who doesn't fit within the store? Like, what happens? Like, is she gonna try and go back and work out and make sure she gets now the physique that would allow her to fit within the framework of a store? Like, what happens to the psyche? Like, is it detrimental?
I completely think it's detrimental because it completely distorts the idea of Black woman and who she is.
Yeah.
And I mean, like Zulaika was saying, the history of colonialism, the history of misogyny, the history of the hatred and the wanting to oppress and control Black bodies is inside of those very statements and phrases. So the idea that, I think as women, and this is I think generally across the board, our bodies have always been contentious spaces. You grow up and your body belongs to your dad, right? That's a traditional, way of looking at it.
Yeah.
I make an example in the way that I grew up, right? And then you get married and your body belongs to your husband. Your body never is something that belongs to you. So even at school, you are the pretty girl store, or you're not, or you're this person. So you're constantly navigating spaces where your body is supposed to be presented in a certain way. And I think that's detrimental because you're constantly then in a space where you're questioning who you are. You're constantly uncertain of who you are. It is a tool used to ensure that you're kept in a box. If you're only worried about how you're going to be presented in a space, more so than who you are, your worth, your values, your dreams, your goals. And not to say you shouldn't look pretty or aspire to look pretty in the version that's in your own eyes. But if you're directed in such a way that takes away from your power, takes away from who you are, takes away from how you want to be and how you want to present yourself, it's detrimental, right? How does that then impact you as a person in all the different ways and spaces that you engage, constantly and consistently hating yourself or doubting yourself because everybody in the room doesn't consider you to be a certain type of beauty? And I think this happens, to Black women consistently continue. We just find, it's almost like we find new ways of, people find new ways of trying to bring us down. Suddenly it's okay to have different kind of hair, but now you need to have a certain kind of body, you need to have a certain kind of, it's a consistent, I think, absolutely.
And I think that it socializes you in a way whereby you feel that there's always something missing, that you have to better yourself for the eyes of a man, either whether be it with your body or whether be it facially, hair. If you do not fit that term, it messes with your psyche in a sense whereby you begin to feel like there's something missing and you constantly have to better yourself and you live to literally better yourself. Everything you're doing is just to better yourself, to be seen there. Or either if you're seen as you're too much for the term, because there's also that aspect like you'll never fit it because you're too much, then you begin to degrade yourself. You're the one now degrading yourself. You're the one now holding yourself back from your full potential because you now want to fit into the umbrella of Stocko.
Yeah.
And when you are in the umbrella of Stocko, it also still does something to your psyche as well, because you're being defined by someone who's not you. You're being defined by not what you have to bring to the table, by saying that because you dress like this, because you look like this, because your waist is this size, for example, or because your upper body is this size, you're now Stocko. It messes with your mind because now you're being defined by someone who's not you.
Yeah. What do you guys think is the implication for gender inequality, especially in a country with a high GBV rate?
Yeah, I mean, this is where rape culture lives, right?
Yeah.
Rape culture literally thrives through this sort of sentiment, you know, particularly, I think it was Zulaika was saying, the idea of ownership, right? So people feel like they have the right to your body and to you and store, and you know, you're there for a good time, so whatever happens to you is part of the good time, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that it's acceptable, the fact that there is no repercussions for calling somebody like that or having anybody call you out, it builds, it builds and it builds. The fact that if you're only valued for a particular way that you look, nothing else, like you're not even a full person, that's not something that we would ever ascribe to guys. And as much as people will say, oh, you know, he looks hot, whatever, I don't know what the kids are saying these days, there's always an underlying sense that that person is still a person. There's depth that is allowed to exist within a male body that often is questioned in a female body. So it's actually very, it's very acceptable to consider somebody this one-dimensional person, because then there's no depth. There's no depth, there's no value, there's not a person, it's a thing. If it's a thing, then you can do whatever you want to that thing. You don't have to pay the thing the same as the guy. You don't have to make sure that that thing has, you know, social protections. You don't have to make sure that, you know what I mean? It's no longer a person. It's a category of a thing that does not necessarily have depth, no value, nor to be challenged, and it's acceptable and it's okay, you know? And that's where gender inequality actually lives. You know, I love your question and your topic, and the reason I said yes is because I'm always like forever talking about how we need to change the way we talk and the way that, because that's where all of this lives.
And the use of language.
And the use of language. By the time we're developing policies, by the time people are marching and picketing, that's like the last end. It started when you stepped into the position as a policymaker and thought of women as less and thought of the things that women need and the ways in which we consider the world okay with just one gender being looked at.
And I like what you mentioned about there's some form of depth that's seen in the male body, whereby you would not do this to the male body, you would not degrade the male body like this, but it's okay when it's done to the female body. There are no terms that exist. We're not sitting here and talking about terms that exist for everyone, because there are literally no terms like this that exist for men at all. There's absolutely none. I don't know if you know any.
No, I mean, even the term for a guy who maybe is hypersexual, it's bitch. Still, it's still they take on those versions because it's only a woman who can embody that. So a guy's acting like that, you know,
and the fact that femininity is attached to it, so that means that there's still that aspect of this is a term that belongs to women. It's attached to women. It's attached to a particular kind of woman, and so. And I think that it largely contributes to misogyny, because part of misogyny is the use of language. It's the way in which men speak to women, what they say about women, how you address a woman. I've never understood the logic of separating misogynistic speech from hate speech. It's the same thing. It's literally the same thing, because when you speak in the language of misogyny, you're speaking explicitly to hate women, to hate women as a whole, or it's not like one particular woman, you're hating women as a whole. And so it contributes largely to misogyny, and from misogyny that leads to rape culture, from rape culture that leads to the increase in GBV, increase in rapes, increases in women being seen as merely disposable objects, objects that are disposable and belong to men. That's literally, it leads to that.
Let me ask you, don't you guys think that a part of us, it's like, whenever certain things happen, say in South Africa, and perhaps it was in an innocent manner that it was played out, and we're so quick as Black people to pull out the race card. Do you think women, especially with particular instances like this, are we so quick to pull out the gender card?
No, I don't think so.
Do you have every right?
Do we have every right? We have every right, but I don't think we do. I don't think we use the gender card a lot, because also there's that competitiveness that you're talking about, that patriarchy loves. And I think there's something about wanting to be the woman that's accepted, that's acceptable, that's liked by everybody. Yeah. The woman that can get along with everyone,
the woman that's the center of the conversation.
The center of it doesn't threaten, right?
No, it doesn't.
So, and because I think by nature we want to be liked, we want to be accepted, we want to be seen as important and seen as more than, the typical kind of woman. I think a lot of times we are quicker to fight each other. So I think what I see often is women being like, but why were you dressed like, and you're just like, okay, that is a narrative that's kind of taking us backwards. Because that idea of competitiveness also comes from self-hate, comes from self-doubt, because of the ways in which women, we see ourselves and are seen and are treated. So I think we don't pull it out enough. We don't actually come, so there's a narrative also that where patriarchy divides women, right? And because there's power in women when we come together, and there's a threat to any patriarchal line. That's why you often see women come together, men will say, what are they talking about? Or even older women will be like, oh, they're gossiping again. Or what are they talking about? What are they scheming? We could be talking about business, we could be talking about our hair, it doesn't matter, but the connotations is when women come together, it's a destructive force. It's not a force for good, it's not a powerful force that that'll bring about anything good. It's going to be destructive. And I think it comes from the fear of the destabilizing that happens when women come together, right? And so I think there is always a constant narrative that tries to weave in that division, and we pick it up ourselves because we want to be seen as, I don't know if we see it as progressive, I don't know if we see it as don't want to be like those other women who are scheming against whatever they're scheming against. I'm better, I'm trying to tell us to do better, and all of those sorts of things. So I don't think we use it enough at all.
Pull it out more, actually.
All the time.
I think it should be pulled out every day because of the way the world is constructed. The world is not constructed in a way whereby these are singular events. It's the way we live. It's the way we think. It's in every single aspect of how the world functions and operates. So it's impossible to not want to pull out that card. It's impossible to not want to pull out the race card, the gender card. These things are connected and they form part of how the world operates and functions, and they're not like singular events where you can be like, it's a Wednesday, Wednesdays we wear pink, let me pull out the gender card. You can't do that. It's the way the world functions. It's a system. It's even more than a system. It's the engine of the world.
It's a male-centered, constructed perspective.
So you have to pull it out everywhere, every room, every space you enter into. So I have to agree that we don't pull it out enough.
And I think we don't because it's associated with
negativity and weakness.
Absolutely, it's a negative thing. She's nagging again. She started, she's forever talking. She doesn't know when to stop. She's always
fighting.
She's always fighting.
Why are you so angry?
Why are you so angry? And actually I'm angry, but so it's associated with such negative connotations. Whereas I think with the race card, there's been a different sort of vibe around it. People still get uncomfortable, but it's considered a place of strength. Because you're calling out, calling truth to power. But with the gender card, it's like she's nagging, she's all of those things that we've just said. So.
How do you think women should be reacting to music like this? Should we embrace it? Because if I'm honest with you, I love music, and for me, the production of that song in particular is out of this world. It's so amazing, and I hear like, ooh, okay, this is really good. This is really good. It's like, wait, what are they saying? No. How should I act? Oh my gosh, but I like the song. Like, I don't know how to be. How should women act towards songs that have these connotations and denotations and degrading words? Like, how should we act even if we like the production? Like, how are we supposed to act?
I think that even though we do like the production, I think we do have to take account for the negative impact of that song, because like now that we speak about John Gates, they are at the end of the day, whether we like the song or not, yes, the song is vibey, it's you know, it has that thing. But at the end of the day, women are being sexualized. You're still being viewed as an object. You're still being sexualized in front of the camera, like when producing that song. Okay, I haven't seen the music video, but the way the song trended, you're still being sexualized at the end of the day. And so I think that it takes a lot of conscious thinking about how to react, you know?
Yeah.
Because it's different. I think it's different when you, let's say the song plays when you're with your homegirls, and then it's different if you're out and the song plays. It's a whole different, it's a different thing, and it's obviously going to be a different reaction.
Yeah, I think that's a tough question. Deep down, I think we should start a movement, right? Honestly, because I mean, when we were younger, it was all the hip hop music, and I'm telling you, like the coolest song would be like the most vulgar of them all, right? So you're caught between, do I want to learn the lyrics and dance to it, or do I just want to shut it down? And being the radical person that I was, I'd be like, I want to shut it down. All my friends would be like, you're crazy. Right? This is a nice beat, relax. It's a nice beat, it's not that serious. And I think there's a few people who felt the same way that I did, but overwhelmingly, people just want to have a good time. So I almost feel like I wish we could start a movement. Right? Where we undercut and we actually begin to develop music that actually speaks positively and upliftingly around women. That is fun. The idea that there's almost this idea that if a song has all of those implications, it's boring.
Yeah.
Right? It can't be well produced, be bumpy, be like on the top charts, you know, be sung in every space or heard everywhere, and not be vulgar. And I don't think that that's true, because I think the history of music has shown that there's different types of music that are, you know, and have not necessarily carried that message. I think that for far too long, we've kind of let it go, because I guess what do you do against the force of the music industry and against the culture that backs it up, and the people and the women who are doing the Vuliket song that dance it so well, right? What do you do about that, about people who want to own that? So you almost want to build a counter narrative that actually says we don't actually want to be associated with that music, and it will start slowly, because I think that for many people, you know, music it's just a thing that I do to have fun. It's not that serious. I think there are not a lot of us who feel this kind of visceral reaction to hearing, oh damn, you know, we're still there. So
and I think on that as well, there are artists that do put in that effort to make songs whereby they empower women's bodies, like Moonchild. I know, and she has gotten a lot of backlash for some of her music, and I think there's also still that culture, which is because of the way patriarchy operates. Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion got a lot of backlash globally for the song WAP. And what they did was they basically wanted women to own their bodies. And there is a lot of backlash that is experienced by people who do the counter action when coming to the way in which music, the way in which the connotation of a lot of songs. And so I think it's also just understanding the way patriarchy operates as well.
And that's why you need a movement, because you need that support. Because anytime you fight against any sort of existing system, there's going to be backlash. And we need to be there to support and ensure that, you know, the support is louder than the backlash, and that's how change happens.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me and the Girl Boss team and having this discussion with us. Like such in-depth knowledge and sharing coming from you guys. Thank you so much. And for the rest of the people who are viewing this, please do comment down below and let us know and join in the discussion. We want to know your views as well. Everyone's voice deserves to be heard. And join us again on our next Go Boss Table discussion.